Welcome to this past paper question from Anglo Saxon and Norman England. This time we're going to look at describing one feature of Saxon punishments. So as with all describe one feature questions, we always think about a feature, something that we can generalize about punishments, and then we go into detail and give it a supporting statement with facts to back that statement up. So what are you going to include in an answer on Saxon punishments? Because there are some very distinctive Saxon punishments that we could talk about. Well, let's have a think. You could talk about the weregild. Now, if you mentioned the weregild, you could start that as a type of penalty. We know that was a very distinctive Saxon punishment that didn't really carry over into the Norman time. So you could talk about that. You could also talk about serious crimes attracted very serious punishments, and you could give examples of those, for example. So let's revise a little bit and remember a little bit about the weregild. So the weregild was obviously a compensation system that was paid to victims of families who had had some injustice done to them. If you killed a nobleman, for example, you might pay 300 shillings. If you killed a freeman, you would pay 100, and of course it was much less for killing a slave or a peasant. But it wasn't just for killing, it could also be for other crimes, like for example if you chopped off someone's thumb or broke their foot. Obviously these working men were needed in the fields. You would be charged 20 shillings, for example, for that. You'd have to compensate the family for that. So the weregild was a sort of compensation system, which was quite an interesting one. So there's lots you can talk about there. You could also talk about the idea of serious crimes, and like any society, serious crimes are met with serious punishments. For example, treason would definitely get the death penalty, but if you stole from people like the church, for example, you could end up having your hand cut off, or if you were a serious offender, you could just be killed for it. We also know that prisons tended to not be used long term. They weren't for locking away criminals. They were just a temporary hold until that person went to trial, and then they faced some sort of justice and then were let go. So which one are you going to pick? Which one would you like to talk about as your punishment if you were doing your one feature? I would suggest having a think, pausing the video, and then using 5 minutes of writing time to try and do your two features question. Remember, give yourself a feature and then support that with information. Right then, pause it and off you go. Okay, so I've decided to use my example as the weregild one because I think that's a really interesting two features one. You can talk about it. Here's what I've done, and let's see if you chose that one. Is it very similar? So I said my feature is going to be one feature of Saxon punishments was the use of the weregild to prevent blood feuds. Don't just write don't just say one feature of Saxon punishments was weregild. Say the use of the weregild to prevent things like blood feuds or serious crimes from happening. My supporting fact is the weregild was a tax or compensation payable to the family of a victim based on the severity of the crime. For example, if you killed a nobleman, you can pay 300 shillings. You could have used the thumb example, you could have used anything. But as long as that example is in there, you've got that supporting evidence. And hopefully, whichever one you chose to do, you gave your feature, and then you clearly showed your supporting fact and statement. And then you get 2 marks. So congratulations, well done. Hopefully you did that. And thank you for listening.